Grimgor Ironhide, the greatest, the most fearsome, the strongest legendary lord in all the world. None can match his might, his economy, his ability to smash everyone's face in that dares stand in his way. Playing Grimgore is playing an endgame crisis. You are the strongest, most powerful, most potent force in the known world. Chaos quakes in fear at your might. Khorne is your biggest fangirl. He is so strong that in every campaign no one will stop you. No one can stop you, even if they dared.
Welcome everyone, Questini here with my campaign guide for Grimgor Ironhide of the Greenskins, probably the strongest legendary lord in the game right now. Actually, who am I kidding? He is the strongest legendary lord in the game right now, by far. Partly because of his faction effects, his lord effects, his race, his starting situation, the enemies he has to deal with. Grimgore is an endgame crisis. That intro that I made with Carl Francis' speech isn't a lie. That's exactly what you're getting if you're playing Grimgore's campaign properly. But let's look at his situation and how you should play him, because I've talked about Grimgore before and some of the potential he has, but what should you do if you're playing this campaign? Well, you do get the Harbinger of Gork faction effects. You get Black Orc recruitment in all provinces. This helps you maintain Black Orcs in your frontline forces because you can recruit them anywhere whenever you take a territory. So the more you increase capacity, the more you can afford them. It's a pretty strong benefit. Was have a chance to contain Black Orcs, and Black Orcs are really good units for the Greenskins. They're some of the best units for the Greenskins, especially in the late game. Getting them in the early game is fairly significant. He also gets 10% campaign movement range for all armies, and he also gets a minus 15% upkeep for Black Orcs and Orc Big Guns, which is pretty substantial. Grimgore is all about the heavy infantry, and the heavy infantry, the Greenskins, is pretty good. Then he has an army with Doom Divers and a unit of Black Orcs and the Immortal banner, which is still bugged. I'm trying not to scroll over it. Let's just go over the Lord effects. This gives you armor, leadership, melee defense, and crucially the Immortals to a unit of Black Orcs that you assign it to, which means that the entities in that unit can't die until their leadership, as long as their leadership is higher than 50% of the base. It is a pretty good starting game army, something that anyone who's ever had to deal with Grimgore will know. He also gets an extra, various benefits with Black Orcs. Specifically, he gets the Immortals armor, which causes fear for them, which in itself is also very substantial. Then, if we look at the big green machine himself, he gets the Warlord Lord skill, which means he gets 30% more post-battle loot, 10 armor for Black Orc units, leadership, and the ability your next, as well as Grimgore's Wa. Grimgore's Wa gives a bunch of melee attack, base weapon damage, and armor piercing damage, and immunity to psychology. Your next puts a major debuff on a lord and a hero within, if you target him with it. And basically, this is Grimgore saying, I'm coming to kill you, and you can't run away. You can't survive the damage I'm dealing with towards you. It is pretty absurd, and it has a pretty solid cooldown as well, and a decent enough duration for what it is doing. Then, in terms of his special skill line, he gets hero capacity for Black Orc big bosses, best of the best, if an enemy lord or hero or hero presence in ability range, which gives them damage resistance and melee defense, so basically ward save, in survivability, armor piercing damage, charge bonus for Black Orc's leadership, bonus versus large, and then fear and terror for himself, hit points, and from the front, which gives him frenzy and extra speed. Grimgore is on foot always, but he is pretty damn fast. I mean, his default speed is 38. You give him 15% speed, this guy will chase you around the battlefield, or he will chase down enemies around the battlefield. Then, in terms of his quest items, he has 2. The control benefit is nice, always nice to have that control benefit, but he does get 2 pretty great items. He gets Gitsnik, which he can get at rank 7. He gets Quest Battle in Blackfire Pass against the Dwarves and Empire, and you can easily smash them with just like an army of goblins. Like his starting army filled with goblin archers will win that battle, which gives him the Gitsnik ability for quite a lot of armor piercing damage, melee attack, bonus versus large, magical attacks, melee attack, even more melee attack, recruitment cost, corruption, which doesn't really matter, but it's nice to have all the same, and income from post-battle loot. The Bloodforged armor gives him a lot of ward save, melee defense when recovery time, enemy hero action success chance, 10 armor, and the Bloodforged armor, which gives him furry armor and an explosion that doesn't affect friendly troops, but basically allows him to get out of a situation, because you can target Grimgore to not kill him, good luck killing Grimgore, but rather just keep him occupied. Well, the Bloodforged armor prevents that from happening. So that is his situation. It is a very powerful combination, because you have a legendary lord that can go toe-to-toe against any other legendary lord in the game, and may not necessarily win against, say, someone like Malice Darkblade, though he'll give Malice Darkblade a hell of a thrashing, but rather will be pretty damn scary and will keep them occupied. Now, here's what CA has done to buff Grimgore through the stratosphere, why he is far stronger in the Forge of the Chaos Dwarves than he was before, because he already started with this army. He's always started with this army or something similar. Now he does obviously start the Black Orc hero, Black Orc Big Boss, and he now starts with a tier 2 settlement. Now, starting with the tier 2 settlement as opposed to a tier 1 Saber Mountain is an enormous benefit for Grimgore, because in 2 turns it means you can start getting nasty Skulkers. In 3 turns, you can start recruiting Trolls. Trolls are great siege breakers. They'll punch way above their tier in order to take down units that are actually much higher tier, and crucially, they'll do very well in a siege. The reason they'll do very well in a siege is because monstrous infantry like this can smash down the gates pretty effectively. They do have the siege attacker ability, they do have fear, they have a bunch of melee benefits. Not the best armor. The armor are from the stone trolls. The leadership isn't the best, but if you're winning combat, they won't break so easily. The important thing is they regenerate and they can smash down walls. And when you're smashing down a gate, they can't smash down walls, but they can smash down gates. When you're smashing down a gate, what will happen in that situation, you want to throw units because the enemy will try and stop you. The AI has gotten better. They'll try and defend more in depth with the patch. Creative Assembly has changed it from just AI blobbing all its units at the gate, but it will still try blobbing its units at the gates, which makes it very, very beneficial to have trolls. Just being able to recruit trolls from turn 3 is in itself a very significant benefit. It gets better, much better. You only have one minor faction that you start at war with, and you can easily take Gorge or Rock from them. So if I auto-resolve this, I think if I auto-resolve both of these on Legendary very hard, I will probably take some damage. But when you take Gorge or Rock, alright, I'm going to lose two of those boys, but it doesn't matter. When you take it, you now have extra recruitment capacity and also the ability of getting 250 income for very cheap. And you can also recruit 4 units of goblin archers early on, or boys if you're one of those people who doesn't want to use goblins in Grimgore's army. He did, by the way, in the lore, for those that don't know. He stopped doing it after he lost against Kislev specifically, but this is not the Grimgore that lost against Kislev. This is the Grimgore that just escaped the Chaos Dwarves. In some way, Grimgore should be on the back foot here. He's the king of the mountain, so to speak. Now, once you take Gorgerock, you can recruit a lot of units, and you can also go over here to deal with Hardra Full of Teeth and just kill him. He's probably going to stay in Blizzard Peak. If he moves away, it's a bit complicated, but you can take him out and confederate him before Kolek can come here, and then take Saber Mountain very, very easily from the Ogres. Though not necessarily with Grimgore. Like, you just need to win this battle. You don't need to kill the army. You should kill him, obviously, but you don't need to kill the army. This is a pretty solid army you can have, and then there's another one, and you will obviously easily dominate them. And you'll also take over this entire province of 4 regions. Just having 4 regions in a province as your starting province is in itself a very significant benefit. But this is where things get a bit crazy, because you can do this early on, or you have other alternatives. Like, you can expand, deal with Kolek if you want to, deal with Zaytan over here, right? Just do a normal expansion. Get the Tomb of Kengai Khan, which gives you a minus 15% upkeep for goblin units and armor piercing damage when fighting against Chaos Dwarves. That's a great landmark, even if it is in the Castways, and you can certainly handle that if you're playing as Grimgore. The Greenskins in general can handle climate pretty well because their early game structures are pretty cheap to get. Like, for instance, just the tier 2 settlement is 1500, tier 3 3000. Other factions play much more. You also get a significant amount of post-battle loot. But you do have quite a lot of ways of becoming incredibly powerful. Like, you could play a campaign normally, just conquer this territory on your own, conquer the Mountains Morn, deal with Zatan, deal with Kolic, or make some kind of agreement with Kolic. Or you can decide to become the most overpowered broken legendary lord in the game. There are various ways of doing it. Some people will be able to take Zarnagrund on turn 2. They're abusing the fact that reinforcements can show up over here and you're at the victory point and take it over. They basically deploy a decoy army. That decoy army draws the reinforcements to the walls, the gates, and then Grimgore shows up with all those men in the settlement and takes it over on turn 2. That is a cheese, however. Then there's people who can use nasty skulkers as a reinforcement army and just take it on turn 5. Personally, I can take the settlement at turn 11. And I do prefer doing that because it doesn't involve cheese, per se. It involves legitimate tactics. What do I mean by that? Well, you can recruit a lot of units very, very quickly as Grimgore, and you're also going to be able to recruit pretty good units as well. Like Goblin Archers are actually some of the best early game units. They're cheap and they're actually very effective in combat, and you can buff them for the Stratosphere for some of the benefits that you get over here from the early research tree. And what you can do, you can get like 3 full stacks or 2 full stacks and just march them over here, declare war on Gorf the Cruel, put one army in ambush stance or both of them in a camp stance. Doesn't matter what you're doing really, or ambush or in camp. Declare war on Gorf, and if you're in his territory or close to his territory, he's going to march out to 2 full stacks. The thing is, you can win against Gorf the Cruel. Because Gorf the Cruel, although he has a pretty powerful army, if he had Kadai Destroyers, that would be a different discussion. But he doesn't have Kadai Destroyers. He has a Fireborn, he has a lot of powerful units, and he will send 40 units against you. But by this point, you can declare a Wa against Gorf the Cruel and get quite a lot of units yourself. And also, because the Wa rewards are dependent on the strength of the faction you declared it on, and Gorf the Cruel starts at strength rank number 1, that means you'll get a significant benefit. In the case of Gorf the Cruel, you get the significant construction cost benefit, which is an amazing benefit to have as any faction early on. And once you win the battle here, you can easily take the settlement through legitimate means. Or you can just auto-resolve it by bringing 3 full stacks and taking the casualties and then taking a province that you'll be able to get to tier 5 very, very quickly. That is insane. The insanity of that is that you'll have a lot of income, unit recruitment options. All the unit recruitment options are Ragnarok, Stone Trolls, Rogue Idols, and a huge income benefit. Also, defeating these armies, if you have 2 free stacks that you're throwing against these armies, means you're also going to get a ridiculous sum of money from it. From, like, if you fight the field battle, like, that's 14k, 16k, 20k, depends on how it is. And if you take Zarnagrund, that's 16k, 20k more money. It is very possible within the first 10, 12 turns to have a treasury full of 100k gold after almost bankrupting yourself building 3 full stacks of units of trolls, nasty skulkers, and goblin archers, or full-on orc boys. If you want to beat Zarnagrund without cheese, you kind of want to get the nasty skulkers and trolls and goblin archers, ignore the orc boys. Later on, you'll want the black orcs. But you can take the settlement. It is a bit amusing. But even if you ignore the settlement, you're still going to easily achieve a very high strength ranking because you're stronger than Zatan, you're stronger than Kolic, you're stronger than Astrogoth. And factions won't be so eager to declare war on you. The key about Greenskins to understand is while every faction hates you and is likely to declare war against you because of that hatred, you have the resources of dealing with them. But you also have an advantage on the diplomatic side as well. The advantage is that the AI declares war based on its strength ranking, yours relative to theirs. So if they're much higher strength ranking than you are, and you're also on a high difficulty, this is where we get into the AI aversion. I'm sure the AI is predisposed against the player, but I think also the AI calculations in declaring war on, like, Legendary with very hard battle difficulty are against the player because the player is considered weaker by the AI. Not just because of the strength ranking, but I think the AI also calculates its chances in battle based on, like, battle difficulty and, of course, the strength of its economy, the strength of its armies, based on campaign difficulty. The thing about Grimgore is you can outpace the AI. You can build a much bigger economy, have more armies than any AI faction in the game. Like Grimgore, when he's played by the AI is very inefficient, generally gets to strength rank 1 Or certainly strength rank 5, and then easily strength rank 1 if Kolic doesn't declare war on him. If Kolic does declare war on him, he might be weakened, but if he's left his own devices, don't be surprised if AI Grimgore on Legendary ends up conquering the entirety of the Mountains of Morn within a couple of dozen turns. And the AI is very inefficient in this. You can do it in like 20 turns. Actually, in one particular campaign, I was playing as Emmerich, Grimgore on Legendary very hard, and I captured all the way to Shambletown. And by turn 18. So he had made his way all the way from here to here. Think on the insanity of that. Think on what that means exactly. Now, I used to believe that Azag was the stronger choice of a legendary lord than Grimgore, or Grom was the stronger choice. Grom because of his faction effect, Azag because he can take advantage of everything Grimgore is doing, and then confederate them and take his empire, but things have changed. The huge benefits Grimgore gets in his campaign by being able to take Zarnagrund so early are immeasurable. Now, other factions can take Zarnagrund so early, but Grimgore is the only one that can legitimately take it via actually fighting the battle instead of just cheesing it. Kolic will do it eventually if you play him, but he'll do it like turn 40, because it is actually a pretty difficult battle. But, I mean, I guess you can use clever battle tactics and do it much earlier, and you commit a lot of resources. But Grimgore commits a lot of resources and then walks all over them. You might push yourself towards bankruptcy. And this is one of the things I need people to understand when they watch these videos. The key to success is to be aggressive. It doesn't matter if your economy is in the red. It doesn't matter if one of your settlements is raided and you may go in the red. As long as you are pushing very aggressively and you're succeeding in that aggression, you can be walking a very fine line. But if you know you can succeed, going for that full aggression will give you an immeasurable amounts of success. This is why Grimgore is so strong. He thrives on aggression. He gains a lot of benefits. He gains a lot of money. He gains a lot of armies on aggression. Think on having 100k by turn 12. What that means for your campaign. Or getting a tier 5 settlement by turn 2. Depending on which cheese or strategy, legitimate or cheese, you want to use to deal with Gorf the Cruel. Think on what that means in your campaign. Well, 100k is 20 armies. 20 armies filled with nasty skulkers, trolls, and goblin archers that can walk over every other army that you might encounter for the rest of the game. That's the upkeep, to be clear, not the recruitment. In terms of recruitment, it's about 10 armies or so. But 10 stacks within that time frame, or recruiting 3 stacks, then getting that kind of money and being able to recruit 10 more and actually maintain them for a decent amount of time, that is insane. That means Grimgore's campaign expansion potential is ridiculous. He is capable of walking over everyone. You are playing an endgame crisis. If you're playing as Kolic, you're controlling that endgame crisis. Kolic can defeat him. If you're playing him and you're careful and you know what you're doing, you can defeat Grimgore, vassalize him, and suddenly you might be strength rank 30, Grimgore is strength rank 1, and he's conquering the map while you're sitting back sipping tea in the challenge zone. Literally, that's something you can do as Kolic. Now, victory conditions wise, you do need to take the entirety of the Mountains of Morn, or a substantial portion of it, as well as taking Uskolak. You don't have a victory condition to take Zarnagrund over there. The long campaign victory conditions are for all the minor greenskin factions to be eliminated, which you don't have to worry about because that will always happen naturally in any campaign, sometimes slower than others, but by the time you take 75 settlements, regardless of how aggressive you are, these guys will cease to exist. The vast majority of them, if not all of them. Some might last longer than others, but all of them are marked for destruction and annihilation, like the Black Venom, Bloody Spears, Broken Nose, Mutinous Gits, Red Eye, Red Fangs, Scabby Eye, Skull Smashers, Teeth Snatchers, Top Knots. The Red Fangs might last a decent amount of time, and can the Scabby Eye, but the other ones will be annihilated very, very quickly. Like, by the time you get the short campaign victory conditions, these factions will cease to exist. And so you don't have to worry about some annoying victory condition to achieve your long campaign victory condition. Grimgore is the kind of guy where you could enable the ultimate endgame crisis from the earliest possible turn, and you can deal with it. Because you're actually not close enough to any of the endgame crisis factions, except like having an army of dwarves parring over here in Karakazorn. Every other endgame crisis is relatively far away. I mean, there's Tretch, sure, to be sure, and the dwarves, but you could beat them. In fact, I'm tempted to maybe do a campaign as Grimgore where I'm doing that. Would be a pretty gigantic clusterfuck, I have to admit. Would be pretty interesting, though, trying to contain the mind, to see if the ultimate endgame crisis could contain the mind of Grimgore. I'm gonna put my money and say no, probably not. They wouldn't contain the might of Grimgore. That's what you're dealing with in this campaign. You have a powerful army, powerful lord, powerful everything, and you'll be able to walk over everyone. The factions that you have as neighbors are generally minor factions. Zaytan might be a thorn, so can Kolek, but they've got other priorities in their campaign as well, and you don't necessarily need to end up being at war with Kolek, regardless of what you decide to do. You probably want to smash Zaytan up real good, though, and take his territory. What you decide to do after that, who you decide to make your next victim, is your choice entirely. You have a lot of flexibility in the campaign because there's actually quite a bit of territory that is up for grabs. Like Kislev, for instance, is all up for grabs over here. So a lot of potential, a lot of power, a lot of benefits in this campaign. I'd probably say the end goal would be to conquer the Badlands and then maybe march south into Khemri, pay Cetra a visit, show him who is the ultimate supreme ruler of the universe. Costin signing out. Don't forget to subscribe, like, and enable notifications. Stay tuned for more.